Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jock here, and this is 21 Virtues. And we were just laughing there because I was just about to come right off my tongue and mention another podcast. And it's not. This is the right one. This is 21 Virtues. And I'm delighted to introduce you guys to my guest today. Is a good friend of mine and another reverend, if you like. You know, as some of you know, that I'm a spiritualist minister, and this is another good friend of mine who is a reverend himself. He'll tell you all about himself. But in this episode, we're going to be talking about addiction. Now, some of you will remember I had a good friend of mine who's in the music industry who basically got his success from his drug addiction. Well, there's all sorts of addictions, and we're going to talk about that today. And as you know, on 21 Virtues, we talk about how people overcome adversity, how their spiritual mindset, their warrior mindset, helps them get through all the trials and tribulations and the heartache that they had experienced in their life, and to come through on the other side and to help teach others and serve others from the trials that they have had. So my guest today is Reverend Lee Hite. How are you, my friend? It's good to see you.
I'm good, my friend. I'm good. Good to be here. Happy to join you in the 21 Virtues family. So,
yeah, see, now you nearly said the no.
I did. Well, I just think it through. It's okay, though.
Yeah.
You want it right.
The amount of times, as I said, the amount of times that I've done that myself and think, yes, welcome to Deadly Departed. No, that's not. That's the wrong one with 21 Virtues. So, Lee, I mean, a lot of people, they don't know who you are. I mean, I know who you are, and I know a bit about your story, but we're going to be talking about that triumphant, experiences that you've gone through. But you're a very spiritual individual. Obviously, you're a reverend in the Universal Church. No, was it the?
No, so Center for Spiritual Living.
That's it, Center for Spiritual Living. Yes. But you're no stranger to adversity. So let's talk a little bit about your upbringing and a little bit about your background. Give people set them up for the story that's coming.
Sure. My upbringing, I was raised in West America, pretty much. I mean, it's my parents were born and raised in the Midwest in Kansas and Arkansas, mostly in Kansas. And they moved out after Dad graduated from college with his bachelor's in physics. He got recruited by Hughes Aircraft and immediately sent off to computer programming, which is what they were all like late 50s. If you were smart and knew your way around math and science, you got recruited and sent to computer programming. So they both ended up, in that world. So I was raised by in that environment, and never really knew what Dad did because he could never talk
about it. Wow! So he kept that very quiet from you.
Yeah, but he was always there. I mean, he was there. He was there for the baseball, football, and basketball, and golf, and all the stuff. And but it's like it was interesting. When I was watching a comedian, and I don't remember her name, but she was going through and talking about and defining all the various generations. The quiet generation, the boomer generation.
Yeah.
And she skipped over and went to Gen Z and millennials, and they're like, "Oh, wait, you forgot Gen X." Where she was like, "Well, everybody forgot Gen X," as we were all left home alone with the keys, and told to go outside and play. And
that was normal. I remember.
That was the thing, right? Yeah. So I'm technically by birth year, I'm a boomer, but in terms of the way I grew up, definitely Gen. So that's the way I grew up, and it's for better or for worse, however you want to look at it, the way it is. I came to my spiritual quest pretty much as a result of that. I left my own devices.
So was it something that you had an interest in, Lee, from a very young age, or was it that because most people, they're following their mother and father's footsteps. You're a Catholic, you're going to the Catholic, you're Protestant, you're going to that spirit, or whether you're whatever it is, they force you in, you're Baptist, you're whatever, poof.
Mom got mad at the Methodist. They were raised Methodist. Mom got mad at the Methodist church when we were little.
Yeah.
When they sent home some little art project or something that they had done for me, but had written my name on,
Right.
as if I'd done it. And that was it.
Okay.
No more Methodist daycare, no more Methodist church. They just had kind of lost interest. And so in my, I don't know, I must have been 12. I started exploring spirituality. I'm out reading the Bible unguided.
Wow.
By myself.
Yeah.
And by the time I got to 14, I had discovered the Centers for Spiritual Living, which at that time was called the Church of Religious Science.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So I started at the Church of Religious Science. Mom had been listening to the radio show from Los Angeles.
Wow.
And there was the Founders Church had their radio show, and right after that, the local minister did his show. Was tagged on right behind it.
Wow.
So that kind of got me into that, and to the youth group, and into leadership, and eventually into ministerial school in the mid-'80s.
Wow.
After kind of rebelling against everybody, and
Well, we all did that. You know what I mean? We all rebelled at some point.
Yeah, it's been 5 years bouncing around California, doing various and sundry activities that I really shouldn't have been doing, but ended up as a lifeguard. Right before I went to ministerial school, I ended up as a lifeguard in Marina Del Rey.
Wow.
Working at the Marina City Club, and living in the back of my El Camino. Sleeping in the parking lot most of the summer.
Just chilling out, just bumming out, chilling out, doing your thing.
On the couch, just surf on or something. But then my dad tracked me down and was like, whatever happened to go to ministerial school, and he had brought, I don't even know how he
found you.
Yeah, I don't even know how he found me. Of course, he did work for the government.
I was going to say, well, you remember that computer job that he was on and that he wouldn't talk about because it was very secretive? Yeah, I'm sure he made a few calls.
Yeah, I'm sure he did make a few calls. I mean, he did some pretty powerful folk, I came to find out later on. But he did. I mean, what he did, what he actually did, I found out later, was he was a very large part of the programming team for the first lunar lander.
Was he really? Wow.
Yes. So he wrote a bunch of the code that the first man on the moon, basically.
Nice. So that's your claim to fame.
That's my dad's claim to fame. Yes.
Your dad's claim. Well, you can claim it. I mean, you're his son. He's not like, yeah, well, my dad. Yeah. The guy only got to the moon because of my dad.
Right. My dad did that.
If he hadn't written that program, there would be no moon landing.
But interestingly enough, the thing that he was most proud of, was a piece of math. I have it here somewhere in my computer, and it's a bit of math that he wrote. Because back early in missile testing, they did it all on computer.
Yeah.
They would have to rewrite the code. They would have to rewrite the equation for every piece of equipment.
Yeah.
So he wrote one equation where all they had to do was plug in certain variables, and it was done.
Wow. So your dad was a genius.
Yeah.
What happened to you? I'm joking.
I have a really good nod for math.
You die off it, you know what I mean?
I thought I used it in your house.
When I was young, Lee, I was never good. I was good at biology and everything else. I was never good at math. But I remember, it was my birthday, and instead of being taken out for a meal for my birthday and getting a present, I got a freaking maths tutor.
Right.
I still failed. I still failed maths, and I didn't like him because when I was coming home from school and everybody was out playing, and I had to have my maths tutor, and he was sitting at my mum's table with crackers and cheese and a coffee and giving me stuff to do. I honestly wanted to shove that pencil up his nose. So. So I was not very good at it, but I mean, so you had obviously a colorful young life, and enjoyed that. But at one point, Lee, as we know, it went wrong for you. What happened there?
Yeah, so I've just after doing a ton of looking and digging, especially over the last few years, we've met. Actually.
That's right, yeah.
As a result of sharing a bit of my story about addiction, my fundamental addiction is the sex and love addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And that came from being exposed to things when I was younger that I really shouldn't.
Right.
And that started way early, and I'm really not going to dig too deep into all of that. Suffice to say that like most addictions, sex and love addiction, I ended up with narcotics, other drugs. And I've told I've told this story a lot. If it didn't take a needle, I probably tried it.
Right. Okay.
And I used it pretty regularly.
So you were into the swinging, the 60s and the
70s.
In the 70s and the whole love and all that. So if it was there, you had it.
It was there. I tried it. Yeah. And it got worse. Junior high into high school, and a couple of years after high school was really prime time for all of it.
So how did you? I mean, obviously you've given yourself a label now. You said that you had an addiction and it was a sex and love addiction, but how did that manifest for you, and how did you know you become addicted? Because we know that addictive personalities, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's anything else, they have to crave that hit because it makes them, it takes them away from reality, and at some point in the seed of their existence, there is some form of trauma, or there's something there that's caused that. So where do you lie in that spectrum there?
Yeah, a lot of it is tied to my parents went through a divorce, found really a lot of it's tied to that. I was the oldest, am the oldest. I have a younger brother. So they got divorced. They divorced for like 3 years, and then they remarried, reconnected. Dad came back.
Right.
So, however, in the ensuing year, in the in-between time, because I'm the oldest male, and there's the time, taking the time and place. So we're talking about the early 60s. I've already emotionally stepped into that male head of household role. Well, Dad comes back, and so I'm not good at it.
Right. Okay. Right.
The message is, I failed at the tender age of 8. I failed twice. Dad's taken off because number one, I'm not good enough. And 2, Dad comes back because I failed stepping in and taking over the job he had handed.
So you probably felt abandoned at that time.
Massively failed twice before the age of 9.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. That's a lot to take into in your life,
right?
To feel abandoned by your father, and then to feel abandoned yet again, because then as you've taken on a role, and it's a loss. It's a sense of grief, if you like, as well. It's a sense of grief because you're kind of losing something there. You're losing that connection. And then to come back and lose it again and then feel totally abandoned, that's a lot to take for a young kid at 8-year-old.
Right. And mom and dad didn't know any better. They at that point in time, they didn't realize, had no conscious awareness of the impact I was going to have.
Yeah.
Number one. Number 2, just because of my own personal nature, I get it all and continue to succeed because I was very driven.
Mm-hmm.
I'm driven to succeed. I have a real perfectionist streak, just in trouble sometimes. And yeah, and I'm kind of smart. I push my way through it. And there were things that I did in school, out not doing homework, blah, 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 to try to get attention.
Yeah. So you were seeking attention because you weren't getting it anywhere else.
Right. But they couldn't give me bad grades because I would not turn in the homework, and I did A's on all these.
So how do you equate? You mentioned obviously a sex and love addiction. I mean, it seems like you come from a loving family. Obviously your mum and dad, yes, they divorced, but there was love there. What was it that you were craving that made you be addicted to that style or that side of life?
I don't think it was necessarily I think it was the substance or the behavior that was there. It was getting the hit, getting the hit off of pornography, getting the hit off of the behaviors, getting the hit off the hiding, and basically hiding out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So hiding out because I'm not feeling good enough, hiding out because
Right.
I'm not getting the support I want, so I'm going to go.
Was it a form of escapism for you as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And did you feel an element of safety or a belonging when you were involved in that? That was something you were seeking from it?
Just because, I mean, there's certainly an element of safety in that. Mostly it was just, there's the chemical response. There's the dopamine hit that's tied to the whole thing, to the whole behavior. And that's what the addiction is too, right? It's the addiction is the chemical response that the body produces.
It's that hit that you get, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's a behavior, you get that dopamine.
Behavior, it's the alcohol, it's the drugs, it's the pornography, the sex, whatever it is. It's the addiction to that hit.
So would you say
once you start working through that, the detox to all the detox is different depending on the drug or whatever. There's still detox.
You have to detox it.
Yeah.
So let's go back. Let's go because you obviously you've labored this. You understand it. But when did you come to the point where you went, "Come on, Lee, you're addicted to this. Something's got to change." When was that trigger for you that you went, "This is not right. I'm totally addicted to this life. It's not doing me any good."
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time around in ministry. I was so. I became a workaholic. Things. I mean, various things. I mean, things were going well, but there were some things that weren't going well, and there was a lot of pressure, and so I, ended up becoming a workaholic. I kept saying yes to various projects or things that just kept me away from everybody and everything.
Is that because you couldn't face the addiction at that time?
Right.
You tried to hide away.
Yep. Absolutely.
So when did it change? When did it change for you?
And it cost me. I had to step down. I ended up having to step down from ministry and walk away. And part of it too was I had a realization. At the same, I was awakening at the same time to the fact that I had been raised in this way of thinking, and I went from. And it's a powerful way of being. It's a powerful spiritual practice. But what I had realized is that I was practicing it in a vacuum to a great extent. I was practicing it in a controlled environment, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
And standing before the congregation or before a class or whatever, and not to say that I wasn't effective because I was quite affected.
Yeah.
And at the same point, not in the back of my mind, in my consciousness, I'm going, what are you talking about? You've never been out in the world and done this.
Right.
Right? You've never gone out in the world away from your controlled
environment. Yeah.
Community environment.
Yeah.
Whether it was youth group or school of ministry or youth program, whatever it was. True or false, for better or for worse, this is the thinking that was going on inside of it. So it became in this real short circuit kind of happening going on inside of me. So was it the addiction or was it this kind of self-defeating thinking?
Or both.
Yes and yes.
Yeah. It was both probably.
Right?
Yeah.
That produced the circumstance that says, you know what, time for you to step away. You want to go prove it.
Right. And was that the turning point for you?
That was really the turning point because I went into started going into recovery meetings.
Right.
Started working on myself. And then I had,
I guess if you're addicted to something other than alcohol, like sex and love addiction, as you mentioned, the process of recovery is similar to Alcoholics Anonymous or anything like that. But how do you equate? I mean, how do you go into recovery from something like that is purely behavioral and not so much addicted to so much of it like an alcoholic substance, but a behavior? How do you go into an environment and open up about that and begin to detox, if you like?
Well, not me. The detox is eliminate detox for SLAA is basically removing all the material, removing access to it. That's all you do. Let's remove access. At the first time when I initially went into recovery on it, there weren't a lot of it was still a pretty new identified.
And there's not a lot of it in the modern day either, because it's
a lot more. Actually, it's a lot more out there.
Is it really? Is it? Okay.
Oh yeah.
I know you hear a lot about drug addiction clinics and a lot about alcohol, but I don't so much hear a great deal in the mainstream about sex and love addiction.
Not as much, but it's out there. I mean, there are places. There are places to go now. I mean, back when I first identified as it, there was nowhere to go.
Right. Did you ever feel judged by people? Obviously,
I never spoke enough about it to feel judged.
It was like, so you're not gonna. It's not going to be like the AA where you say, my name's Robert and I'm an alcoholic.
There were meetings. I went to some focus meetings. There weren't a lot of them, but I ended up going to AA more than anything else, and just identifying as an alcoholic.
And did you have that addiction as well? Do you think you did?
I go back and forth with that one. I don't drink a lot. I drink occasionally. I can go weeks or months without it. So I would never identify as an alcoholic, but I acknowledge it as a potential gateway.
See, I don't see. I'm a Scotsman. I like a wee dram every now and again, but I don't have a drink problem. I drink, I get drunk, I fall over. It's no problem. No, and anybody who's listening, that's not actually true. I haven't fallen over yet, but
But I'm very mindful and cautious about other things.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's what 2 years this past smoking.
Yeah, so you were addicted to smoke.
You were there, with Christopher and I did
75 hard.
75 hard.
That's just crazy. I mean,
So
The way I think about that, that's just swapping one addiction for another. Don't tell Chris I said that. Chris, if you're listening, I'm only joking.
for those who say that,
See, I said I started when you guys were doing that. I said I'm going through my own version of 75 hard. It's called 75 soft. That way.
I've gotten a bit soft since, but yeah. It's and the book. I mean, it gets so recovery is can be so powerful.
It's almost a spiritual awakening, because that was something we were going to get onto. Yeah,
most people in recovery will speak of spiritual awakening.
No, did your addiction cause turmoil in relationships?
Blew up 2 marriages.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go. I know that. I wanted you to go there, but I didn't want to just come out and say it. So
no,
I'm glad you've gone in there.
Because there was the first time in recovery, then there was the second time.
Mm-hmm.
The second time, I went a whole lot deeper with it. And
why don't you think you learned from the first?
I ended up on Clubhouse, where we were, and ended up in a room where the title was "Sex Addiction, Is It Real?"
Mm.
And so I went in there to let them know, yes, indeed,
It is real.
there were a whole lot of doubters. It was the very first time that I had ever come out in any kind of public way about it.
And I think a lot of, I mean, if you go into even the mainstream understanding, I know that, before I joined the military, I worked in a psychiatric hospital for a time. And one of the wards I worked in was people who were sexually addicted. And it was quite scary, to be honest, especially as a young kid as well, trying to understand that. They had that type of addiction would have been taken as a serious mental imbalance and a psychological problem. But I don't think people that go through it really label themselves that way. I think there's a great deal of misunderstanding when it comes down to that.
There's a lot of misunderstanding, and it's like I'd sit in meetings and just listen to some of the things that a lot of the people in there going through, and go, you know what, that's pretty easy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
Relative to what a lot of these other people went through, it was men and women,
right?
But, and it's to such a degree that in SAA or SLA, there are men's meetings and there are women's meetings, and very rarely do the two cross because it's flat out too triggering.
I was going to say that would have been really dangerous to do.
Yeah,
and probably
for everybody, the woman.
Yeah. So let me go back to your marriages, and if I go too deep with it, then you just tell me to shut up. But who broke it off? Was it you, or was it your wives? Did they just get to the point where I can't deal with this?
No, they did.
They did. Is it because they how do you think they felt then when you were addicted? How did they feel? Did you take into consideration their feelings?
When I was acting out? No, not at all.
No. Right.
Because I thought I was too smart, bright, sneaky. All that magical ethics thinking. Like, don't call it magical for nothing. I mean, it's there. And the acting out, just you don't. And any addict will tell you this, no matter what the substance is or the process, all logic goes out the window.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. And did they catch you, and that was the end of it, or did they always were they living with it? Because some people
that I got caught.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I got caught and called out, and both of them tried to walk the road with me, but just gave up because I couldn't. Until they walked away, I couldn't get a handle. Until yeah.
So did that when you say you got caught, was that in not just being addicted to porn, but would that have been infidelity as well?
No. So it was just for me. It was just porn.
Wow.
Yeah.
So would you say that it kind of destroyed your life in a way, or do you think? Well, let me rephrase that. Was it a destroyer of your life, or was it an awakener of your life?
In the end, or an awakening?
Yeah.
Yes.
But at the time,
a destroyer.
It was destroying you. Okay.
Yeah.
And so how did you then turn from this? You got to the point, Lee, that you realize you've got a problem and you start to take action on that. You have an awareness of it, you start to take action to try and change that. Let's go into because obviously when people are listening to this and they're going like, oh my God, he was like that, and I go to church on a Sunday and he, listen to this Reverend, but obviously there's been a massive change in you spiritually,
right?
Which awoke you, which made you have had a spiritual realization. I don't really like the term awakening, but spiritual realization. Mm-hmm. And now you help people and you serve. You're a reverend, but how did you? I know you've been involved in spirituality ever since you were young and involved in the church.
Mm-hmm.
But to come from that addiction, to face it, and then to go and minister. How did you equate the two? How did you move into that?
It's the ministry and spirituality has been such a part of my life. It's the only thing that's in the midst of all of it, in the midst of all the in the midst of all the addiction, and whether it was pornography or Valium, cocaine, marijuana, any of it, all of it. It was the point that I could. It was the one point that I could hold on to. Was my belief in some kind of a higher power that would get me through.
I was going to say that was your catalyst. That was the power behind you that helped you get through it. Right. Did you ever think, Lee, that you could lose it?
That ended up drawing to me the people, the circumstances, the resources that helped me get through. When I was willing to render and say, you know what, I can't.
That's a powerful thing, ladies and gentlemen, to realize from this. Is what he's saying is that it's more of a power to you if you ask for help and realize that you need help. You can't do it alone, and to realize you get it from a higher power, or you've been sent the right information or the right people from a higher power. Never be ashamed of asking for help, because it takes more to do that, and you're more of a spiritual warrior asking for help than anything else.
And the most powerful recovery group I've ever been in is right there on Clubhouse.
And you still going to that group?
I still go into there's a group in the middle every morning at 8 o'clock Pacific.
Wow.
Monday, Friday, and there's a Saturday morning group. And I'm not telling stories out of school, because he tells it all the time. It is led by another person out of SLA.
Right.
And he's become a great resource. He's just a wonderful man. And I think it's at 6 a.m. Saturday, 6 a.m. Pacific. and it runs for an hour, 2 hours regularly.
And do you think that has that group been part of your recovery, essentially? Because I mean, how raw is it that you have gone through these stages?
This past time, especially these past few years, I've gone so much deeper into it, and so much deeper into the root causes.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people take my story, kind of twist it around, and they'll lay it out at the feet of my parents. That I'm like, no, you know what? No,
it's you.
Don't even try. Because they're from the point of view that you come from.
Yeah.
There is a point at which it's like either I create it all or I create none of it, right?
Exactly.
And so there is a purpose. There's a reason. There is a genesis and an outcome that I'm looking for as part of all this. And if that is simply sit here and say, you know what, I survived it. There is a trail of tears behind me, and I do what I can to work with that. To heal myself so that I can, work with healing my family, my kids.
I was going to ask you that. I said, because the Trail of Tears obviously extends far beyond you. It extends to your family and to your ex-wife. So how have you ratified that then? How have you gone through a healing process with them? Have you created some form of forgiveness?
First wife and I talk pretty right about it from time to time. Second wife and I have done a good deal of talking about it. I'm sure there's still more to be done.
Right.
She's working her process. I'm working mine, and when they cross, we talk about it.
Do you think there's any risk of you?
The big thing for me, my kids, because they're in California, they're not here with me. And so my boy is 11, he'll be 12. He's getting to that age. There will be a lot of more conversations about things.
Does he know any of your background in the past from that? I mean, he's fairly young.
No.
Will you ever discuss that with him?
At some point.
Yeah.
And I've talked about my oldest, and I've talked about.
Right.
He's 30.
Yeah. How did he take that? How when you were talking? Has he been okay?
There's still more conversation.
Is there any risk?
God bless him. He is a loving, powerful young man.
Right.
And he's got look out world. He's coming.
He's coming on. What about relapses for you? Is there any risk of you relapsing, or do you think you're totally over it?
Every day there's a risk of relapse. I'm mindful of it.
Do you fight it, or do you still fight the urge?
Some days. When I get really stressed out, sure.
Yeah. Okay. And so, in your role as a minister, as a ministerial leader, can you use that, the suffering that you've gone through, the triumph, and even the temptations you still have, to sufficiently teach your people spiritually?
I talk mostly about recovery. I talk about, I point to. I don't get too terribly explicit about it at all, but I talk about recovery. So,
have you been honest with your congregation? Do they know?
Some.
And how was that taken? Because obviously it must be quite, it's obviously quite brave of you to take the public role that you have as a spiritual minister, and to admit it to certain people, understand that, because there's always that fear, Lee, of being judged. This guy's a minister, he should not be doing that. It's like, people get shocked at me that I can cuss a lot like any trooper, and yet I'm still a spiritualist minister.
Sure.
So obviously there's the human side to us, but how has that been taken in your congregation?
It's been fine. I mean, I talked to my co-minister knows. There's a couple people in the congregation that know. I just talk about being in recovery. That's really all that. And that's all. If details need to be had, they can be had. But I'm not going to just flash it out there and say.
No.
Because there's still a certain amount of stigma. Especially in the Western, in the States, so to speak, it was still a very charged topic.
Do you think you would ever set something up through your church to help others that are maybe going through this? Because obviously, you're succeeding, you're battling, you're getting there.
I intend to have a conversation with leadership about it at some point. My formal relationship has never ended, but I have not been under contract anywhere, though just this past March. March 1st, I think I went under contract here in Arizona.
As the minister in that church?
Yeah, as co-senior.
Right, okay. Yeah. Do you want to get a program started for it? Because obviously you're in the right place. You've got the right heart.
I mean, the organization. When I went through it the first time, there was a program in place. As a matter of fact, yeah. Anyway, I just need to look in place now. I've not gotten that deeply involved in the organization yet. I was very deeply, of course, part of the problem.
Yeah, too deep. So now you're getting balance.
I was way out of balance. So it's a conversation I tend to have and see what's in place
now,
and share my.
I was going to say, because your story's powerful. Help.
Sharing my story with them and what my experience was the first time around will certainly be edifying.
Yeah. What about the people that that obviously, in Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a mentoring program where obviously you take someone under your wing and you mentor them. Is that the same kind of thing that you have in SLAA as well?
Sponsoring, absolutely.
You sponsor them?
Yeah, I don't have anybody right now that I'm working with. But
would you? Is that something you want to do?
At some point, possibly. I mean, people want to reach out.
So let me ask you this then: Are you over it? Do you think you've healed from your sex and love addiction?
Yes.
Are you? But you're fearful of relapse.
Am I fearful of it? No, I'm not fearful. Mindful.
Mindful of it. It could happen.
Yeah, I'm mindful. I'm mindful of the tendencies. I'm mindful of getting myself too tired, too stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
The old rule is hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Right? Those are the four. And I still get those are the things. The lonely and tired for me. The angry, lonely, and tired. Those are the things.
Those are your triggers.
Those are my triggers.
So obviously, I mean, everybody can, feel these emotions from time to time. We can feel lonely, we can feel angry and hungry and tired and everything else. So what do you do? What is your tools that you could give? I mean, anybody who's listening to this now that might be considering that they have this addiction, what tools do you use that immediately helps you straight away that you could give to someone now?
The first thing is to not sit still. You start feeling. For me, what I want to do is I have to either go do something,
right.
go to the gym, go for a walk, go do something. Reach out, pick up the phone. People in talk about the 1,000-pound telephone, right? That phone, when you really need help, that phone weighs 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Because you don't. I mean, the last thing you want to do is reach out to somebody and say, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, because we don't want to admit that we feel that we're admitting weakness.
Right. And so, I mean, those for me, those are the two things, the two first things that I do. Some would say, well, why don't you just pray and meditate?
Guys, I'm laughing because we both know that it ain't. That's just not the answer either. You can't just do that.
Right. Yeah, when it comes to addiction, it is so true. The phrase that comes again and again and again. Addiction thrives in isolation. Doesn't matter what the addiction is, it will thrive in isolation. So that is the play. So it's finding a way to connect.
Disconnection is one of the catalysts to addiction.
Right. So you got to go find somebody to connect. Find somebody healthy.
I was going to say because you went down a little rabbit hole there because I was saying connect with in the right way, not connect
in the right way. Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, it's so that's where you want to find a way to reach out. If you can't find somebody, then you read. I mean, for me, it was picking up a book and reading.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It didn't matter what the book was. Yeah. So it could be fiction. It could be something
not
helpful.
The Kama Sutra.
No, nothing. No.
Ernest Holmes, Science of Mind.
Yes. Many times that
absolutely.
Was it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what do you want to get out? I mean, obviously life has changed for you now. And you've come through this battle. And to a certain extent you're still battling as you do in your mind, but you're mindful of it. Mm-hmm. What is the main goal for you now in your life?
I still have my day job, which really is not pertinent at this point. But I'm moving towards expanding ministry. We want to grow this whole congregation we've got here. I've got a workshop. I'm getting back into doing workshop work.
Saw the flyer. Very awesome, by the way.
You saw the flyer?
We'll need to share it on the network crew.
I've got it. I just got it yesterday.
I was going to say, I knew you just got it yesterday, so I thought, okay, he needs to get that on the network. We need to put that out for him.
We'll get that pulled together. I'm very excited about that. Because that for me, that and speaking and teaching and doing the workshops, that's part of the ministry that really lights me up. And doing the workshop, that's the way I learned. Back when I was a teenager.
And you learn while you're doing it, because we learn what we need to teach. We teach what we need to learn. Obviously, that's the thing.
Absolutely. So I'm very excited. Friday night, this Saturday, and then and it's great. It'll be a great thing. So we'll get that up on the.
So let's talk a little bit about the church and give them a shout out and attract anybody that wants to go there, and especially, if you are struggling with some form of addiction, your doors are open to people that can come to you for help as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're open to everybody. Yeah.
So let's tell them where you are. Tell them.
We're out in Scottsdale, Arizona. Meet on Sunday mornings. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. So you can follow us there. Follow me on all the stuff.
Follow Lee, guys. If you're out there and you're, whether you're male, female, in between, or even a donkey, where or some, you think you're some kind of animal, whatever it is, no matter what you think you are, reach out to Lee and talk with him, because he's been in the trenches and he knows what you're going through. And as well as offering words of comfort and understanding, he might be able to put you in the right direction to other people that can help you. So definitely reach out and go to, if you're in the area, go to church or go on live and listen to him on a Sunday. Definitely.
Yeah, you just pick me up on Instagram or Facebook. I mean, I put all the stuff up there.
Well, you've got to tell them how to get you on there, because what they do is they're looking for Lee Hite. Are they looking for?
They're looking for Lee Hite, or you can look for Simple Spirit 101.
That's the one. That's the one. Simple
That's
Spirit 101. That's where you'll get him.
Yeah, Simple Spirit 101 on Facebook and Instagram, and now Threads as well.
Oh, you've jumped on the Threads, have you?
I jumped on the Threads.
I'm bothered with it. I'm not going to bother with it. I got enough to deal with. I'm not going to bother with that. It's just, and Matt Zuckerberg, if you're listening, I ain't giving you my data. Though I might get forced into doing it, you never know, because all my mates and Tara and Chris and probably everybody else is on it, so I'll probably end up having to go on it now. But at the moment, I'm fighting it. It's like an addiction.
Tara's on there.
I'm fighting it. It's like an addiction. This is what we're talking about. I'm fighting you, Zuck. So I'm
right.
I'm on enough.
I'm on Twitter too. Well, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. There's just too much out there. I don't want to waste my time.
Way too much.
But yeah,
that's what was right there. It's like one more.
You get lost. I find myself as well. I think there's another addiction, and that's addiction to. I'm addicted to comedy. I doom scroll comedy pieces. So I watch comedians, and I'm like, I start, and I'll just have a wee look at this. I'm sitting outside, and all of a sudden, it's like 2.5 hours have gone by, and I'm like, what have you done? Well, I was supposed to write an article, but I don't know. I'm just listening to Matt Rife because he's awesome. If you're listening to Matt Rife, you are awesome. So I doom scroll and comedians and my time just goes, and then people are like, you've got a deadline. I was like, oh shit, what what's that?
Right. I know. I've got five articles I'm working on.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Because you're a very eloquent writer as well. So you'll see Lee in our holistic network and also in different other places that we have as well. So there's a lot of wisdom there.
It's going to get a whole bunch of attention here in the next.
And that's when he's stressed. He's got to write. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Lee, I want to thank you for coming on and give us the website of the church as well. What's the URL that people can go?
Scottsdalecsl.org.
Yeah.
Well, and so that you can find all the information on the workshop is there now. It's all up on there. You can register if you want.
No, you wouldn't believe that we could go on forever, but we've actually been going on an hour, and I'm very mindful of that. But Lee will be back, and we'll take another subject, and certainly in other spiritual subjects that I'll get Lee back on. But I want to leave I want to give you the last few minutes. What message have you got, Lee, for people out there who may have some form of addiction, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex, whether it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll, which we all loved that back in the day.
Yeah.
But what I mean, in all seriousness, what message have you got for them, would you say?
It's the big thing for me is remembering that no matter how dark it is right now, you're worthwhile.
Ah, yeah, good one. Nice.
You matter. You make a difference. And there is somebody near you that is waiting to answer.
Love it.
There's somebody close to you that is waiting for you to reach out and say, you know what, I need help.
Love it.
Because they see. You think they don't see it, but they see it.
Brilliant.
So find the help. Find somebody to talk to. And if you don't think you have somebody, come find me. I'll talk to you.
You can reach out. Simple Spirit 101. Reach out to him, guys. He's an awesome guy and a good friend as well, and spiritual brother that is there to help others. Lee, I want to thank you for being my guest on 21 Virtues, and sign up to the podcast. Give us a like if you're watching us on YouTube. Obviously, you're going to get more of the laughs and the faces and everything else. But if you're listening to us as well, you can just feel the energy and the love that's there as well for the rest of humanity. Right. And most of all, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, and if you want to even reach out to me on the site or anything, you want me to send you to Lee, then reach out. Ask anything. I'll send you over to him. I'll send you his details. Underneath in the show notes, you're going to have all his details. Anyway, But if there's something in this episode that's made you know what, I can relate to that. I want to go deeper with that, because we can't go deeper if you don't ask us to go deeper. So, let us know. Is there something here that you want him to cover even more, that I can bring him back on, or ask any question from this episode? Let us know how you feel. Don't be frightened to reach out. Don't be frightened, because there's always an ear waiting to listen for you. And this is deadly, but no, it's not. It's 21 Virtues. I'm only joking. That's me other podcast. Give a shout out. Guys, thank you for listening. We'll be back. And actually, coming up in one of the next episodes, we have got Lisa. I think it's Lisa Miller, you're going to love Lisa Miller, who's coming on to 21 Virtues as well, who is a scientist and a New York Times best-selling author. And we'll be talking about all sorts of things, from the brain to the spirit and everything in between. So God bless, ladies and gentlemen. Please reach out to my good friend Lee and connect with him, because you never know, it might just change your life. God bless.